我走近，总是那么悄悄地，不该是你压抑，让你发觉自己是幻影。每一次我还你，总是那么细细地，不让寂寞听到嘲笑我用温柔的声音。
每一次我离去，总是那么轻轻地，
不敢将你惊醒，让你发觉心在我梦里。
每一次我等你，总是那么静静地，
不让光阴知道，安慰我用无言的虚心。
一个一个想你的日子，砌成一栋孤单的房子。我在上楼下楼，开门关门，翻着抽屉寻着你名字。一个一个想你的日子，从你回眸而去那一天开始。我的日记写成诗，诗的背后寻到你名字。想着你的感觉，犹如雨的长夜，淋湿我的岁月，而我却依然不知不觉。想着你的感觉，犹如梦的坚决，却让我的日夜吹也吹不走你的容颜。一个一个想你的日子，砌成一栋孤单的房子。我在上楼下楼，开门关门，翻着抽屉寻着你名字。一个一个想你的日子，从你回眸而去那一天开始。我的日记写成诗，诗的背后寻到你名字。想着你的感觉，犹如雨的长夜，淋湿我的岁月，而我却依然不知不觉。想着你的感觉，犹如梦的坚决，却让我的日夜吹也吹不走你的容颜。想着你的感觉，犹如雨的长夜，淋湿我的岁月，而我却依然不知不觉。想着你的感觉，犹如梦的坚决，却让我的日夜吹也吹不走你的容颜。
It is October 18th, 2024, Common Era.
世界变得太快，你的美还在不在？我们最好别徘徊，最好别再傻等待。没人呀，世界变得太快，你的美还在不在？最好把握住现在，问你明白不明白？没人呀，我们会变很快，会还给你很多爱，因为世界变得快，我常安静不下来，因为世界变得快，我常安静不下来，我常安静不下来。
红的花开满了木棉道，长长的街好像在燃烧。沉沉的夜徘徊在木棉道，轻轻的风吹过了树梢。那是去年夏天的高潮。莫名的我怎能忘了？那是梦里难忘的波涛。爱情就像梦魇岛，季节过去就谢了。爱情就像那梦魇岛，缠缠绵绵断不红的花开满了木棉道，长长的街好像在燃烧。沉沉的夜徘徊在木棉道，轻轻的风吹过了树梢。莫名的我怎能忘了？那是去年夏天的高潮。莫名的我怎能忘了？那是梦里难忘的波涛。爱情就像梦魇岛，季节过去就谢了。爱情就像那梦魇岛，缠缠绵绵断不了。
opinions expressed on the following program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of CIUT FM.
From New York, this is Democracy Now!
My name is Feroz Sidhu. I'm a trauma surgeon in California. I worked in Gaza European Hospital in March and April. The attack on northern Gaza especially is intensifying, and it's possibly entering a new phase that's very dangerous.
As the Gaza death toll rises, we'll speak with a California surgeon who wrote a devastating op-ed in the New York Times headlined 65 Doctors, Nurses, and Paramedics, What We Saw in Gaza. Then, less than 3 weeks from the election, Kamala Harris is campaigning in Michigan. Will she lose votes over the Biden administration's support for Israel's war on Gaza and its expanding war on Lebanon? We'll speak with Abbas Alawiya, who co-founded the Uncommitted movement.
The position that we're representing is widely popular among Democrats. We need to stop sending weapons that kill civilians. That's how we achieve a ceasefire. Those are the demands of our movement.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump will take questions from Latinx voters at a town hall meeting in Miami. We'll look at how Harris and Trump are ramping up efforts to appeal to this major voting bloc in battleground states. Are some in the Latinx community moving to the right? All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Oxfam and over 35 other humanitarian groups have issued a dire warning about Israel's siege on northern Gaza. In a statement, the group said, quote, "The Israeli forces' assault on Gaza has escalated to a horrifying level of atrocity. Northern Gaza is being wiped off the map," they wrote. Israel's barred all food into the area while attacks on displaced people continue. Meanwhile, the Biden administration sent Israel a written warning that the U.S. may cut off military assistance if Israel does not boost humanitarian aid access to Gaza within the next 30 days. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin wrote, quote, "We're now writing to underscore the U.S. government's deep concern over the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza and seek urgent and sustained actions by your government this month to reverse this trajectory," unquote. The Biden administration has continued to arm Israel despite findings by its own experts at USAID and the State Department that Israel's routinely impeded delivery of food and medicine to Gaza in violation of U.S. law. On Tuesday, State Department spokesperson Matt Miller faced numerous questions about U.S. policy. This is Reuters journalist Humaira Pamuk.
Given you are already saying humanitarian assistance is very low and putting in front of Israel a bunch of concrete measures on how to improve it, why are you waiting for another 30 days to implement the law?
Because we believe it's appropriate to give them a chance to cure the problem.
Other outlets have reported, Reuters has reported all the way back in April, that officials from this department have assessed in internal memos that Israel, quote, is persistently and arbitrarily impeding aid in Gaza. So if the law is already being, if it's already doing it, why is the United States waiting?
So, first of all, that is not, so we've been over this before, I know, from this podium. There are people that reach that conclusion, and there are people inside this building who reach the opposite conclusion. So I think it's important to state that for the record.
In Lebanon, Israel attacked a municipal building in the southern town of Nabatea, killing 6 people, including the town's mayor. The BBC reports the mayor and other city workers were killed while holding a meeting to discuss coordinating aid for civilians remaining in the area. Israel also bombed the village of Kana, striking a healthcare center and several homes, killing at least 15 people. Israel also bombed the southern suburb Netanyahu dismisses calls for a ceasefire. The UN
Netanyahu.
Refugee Agency is warning a quarter of Lebanon is now under forced evacuation orders from Israel.
Israeli airstrikes and Israeli evacuation orders continue to increase the areas impacted. So now that we have over 25% of the country under a direct Israeli military evacuation order. Just yesterday, we had another 20 villages issued with an evacuation order in the south of the country.
In Georgia, more than 325,000 voters cast ballots Tuesday on the first day of early voting here in the United States. That's more than twice the previous record set 4 years ago. Meanwhile, a Georgia judge has blocked a controversial new rule set by the Georgia State Election Board that would have required election workers to hand count the number of ballots cast in each precinct on Election Day. More questions are being raised about Trump's mental state after a town hall event in Pennsylvania took an unexpected turn Monday when 2 audience members fainted. Trump ended up taking just 5 questions from the crowd before making this announcement.
Let's not do any more questions. Let's just listen to music. Let's make it into music. Who the hell wants to hear questions, right?
For the next more than 30 minutes, Trump's staff played music while the former president swayed and bopped to the music on stage, along with South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, who was hosting the town hall. Trump eventually left the stage without taking any more questions. On Tuesday, Kamala Harris responded to Trump's town hall by writing online, quote, "Hope he's okay." On Tuesday, Trump appeared at the Economic Club of Chicago, where he was grilled about reports that his economic proposals could devastate the U.S. economy. He was asked by Bloomberg editor-in-chief John Micklethwait, who cited a recent study by the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget.
If you add up all the promises you've made, and your plans would add $7.5 trillion to the debt, that's more than twice the total for Vice President Harris. You're on course to push up debt up to 150% of GDP. This is a very business-like audience.
Yeah.
Why should they trust you with that?
Because we're about growth. She's got no growth whatsoever, and we're all about growth.
In other election news, newly disclosed federal filings show multi-billionaire Elon Musk has officially become one of Donald Trump's biggest financial backers. Musk gave around $75 million to his pro-Trump super PAC in the last quarter. Meanwhile, Miriam Adelson, the billionaire wife of the late casino magnate Sheldon Adelson, gave $95 million to her pro-Trump super PAC. Earlier this year, the Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported Miriam Adelson is pushing Trump to support Israel annexing the entire occupied West Bank. On Tuesday, the popular radio host Charlemagne the God interviewed Kamala Harris in Detroit in what was billed as an audio town hall. During the event, Harris agreed that Trump's vision for the country could be described as fascism.
The other Donald Trump is about taking us backward.
The other is about fascism. Why can't we just say it?
The World Food Program's warning millions of people in southern Africa are facing the region's worst food crisis in decades due to a devastating drought. 5 countries, Lesotho, Malawi, Namibia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, have already declared national disasters. The World Food Program said Tuesday the drought could deepen into a full-scale humanitarian crisis.
A historic drought, the worst food crisis yet, has devastated more than 27 million lives across the region. Some 21 million children in Southern Africa are malnourished. For many communities, this is the worst food crisis in decades.
North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper says 92 people are still missing in the state after Hurricane Helene devastated the city of Asheville and other mountain communities over 2 weeks ago. The storm's death toll stands at around 250 across 6 states. The number of migrants dying in New Mexico near the U.S.-Mexico border has increased tenfold over the past 5 years. Over 220 bodies have been found since January of last year. Many of the victims are believed to have died from dehydration and malnutrition as they attempt to cross scorching hot desert or mountain areas to seek refuge in the United States. Google's announced plans to build 7 nuclear reactors in the United States to help power the company's data centers and artificial intelligence systems. The announcement comes just a month after Microsoft said it would fund the reopening of the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant, the site of the worst nuclear disaster in U.S. history. And music mogul Sean Diddy Combs is facing 6 new rape and sexual assault lawsuits. Combs has been jailed since mid-September after pleading not guilty to federal racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and other charges. The attorney Tony Busby has said is representing more than 120 people who have made sexual assault and rape allegations against Combs, who was once one of the most powerful figures in the entertainment world. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Times reveals new details about how Combs attacked a UCLA football coach and choked an intern in the coach's office in 2015 in a dispute over how the coach treated Combs' son. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York with Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
As the official death toll in Gaza passes more than 42,400, the true number may be impossible to know until Israel's war is over. But medical workers who witnessed the carnage in Gaza's hospitals are speaking out. We begin today's show with a surgeon who volunteered at the European Hospital in Khan Yunis and wrote a devastating opinion piece in the New York Times, headlined 65 Doctors, Nurses, and Paramedics, What We Saw in Gaza. In a minute, we'll be joined by Dr. Feroz Sidwa, who begins the piece writing, quote, I worked as a trauma surgeon in Gaza from March 25th to April 8th. I volunteered in Ukraine and Haiti. I grew up in Flint, Michigan. I've seen violence and worked in conflict zones. But of the many things that stood out about working in a hospital in Gaza, one got to be. Nearly every day I was there, I saw a new young child who'd been shot in the head or the chest, virtually all of whom went on to die. 13 in total. At the time, I assumed this had to be the work of a particularly sadistic soldier located nearby. But after returning home, I met an emergency medicine physician who'd worked in a different hospital in Gaza 2 months before me. I couldn't believe the number of kids I saw shot in the head, I told him. To my surprise, he responded, yeah, me too, every single day, he said. The piece quotes dozens of healthcare workers and includes 3 X-rays or CT scans of pediatric patients who were shot in the head or the left side of the chest. The person who provided the scans was Dr. Mimi Saad, who works in Khan Yunis from August 8th to September 5th, and said the children usually arrived at the hospital either dead or in critical condition after suffering a single shot. On Tuesday, the New York Times opinion section editor issued a statement refuting claims circulating online that the images were altered, saying the editors had, quote, photographs to corroborate the CT scan images, but, quote, because of their graphic nature, we decided these photos of children with gunshot wounds to the head or neck were too horrific for publication. For more, we're joined by Dr. Feroz Sidwa, the trauma and general surgeon who wrote this piece. He also spearheaded an open letter to President Biden and Vice President Harris, signed by 99 U.S. medical professionals who served in Gaza, testifying to the unprecedented scale of the healthcare catastrophe and calling for an immediate ceasefire and the end to all U.S. support for Israel. We are also joined in Chicago by Raja Musla, the country representative in Gaza of Med Global, a medical humanitarian aid group. She previously worked as a nurse at Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Dr. Feroz Sidwa, let's begin with you. Thank you for joining us in the studio. We heard from you in Gaza and spoke to you right when you came out. This is very significant, this this New York Times op-ed. First, that the Times agreed to run it, and then the
Yeah, I'd like to
controversy
come out with an
around
expose.
it, and what they published
out
and what they
with an
didn't
expose.
publish. Tell us the story.
Yeah, the Times piece was interesting. Actually, the opinion section reached out, the visual opinion team reached out to me and asked me to write the piece. So we came up with the idea together, and that was after we wrote an open letter. Like you mentioned, we wrote one in October, but we also wrote one in July. And to the Biden administration, that was when the Times reached out to me and said, can we get information about exactly who wrote or who saw what in Gaza? So we did. We designed a poll. I got everybody to answer it that I could, and we went on from there. The controversy that you mentioned about the images is just manufactured nonsense. It's no connection to reality whatsoever. These pictures there's no reason to doubt them at all. Furthermore, I've seen the full CT scans. I've seen the photos of the actual wounds on the children. It's not surprising. These were common injuries in Gaza. I mean, like, almost everybody saw the same thing. Everybody saw kids get shot in the head. Almost everybody saw severely malnourished children. So it seems like the piece has had an effect. It seems like it's making its way around, and people are seeing it, and they're kind of horrified by what they see, which they should be.
And then talk about the whole issue of whether to show the dead or dying children and their injuries.
Yeah, so that was never. So in the piece as I wrote it, that was never part of the plan, I guess you would say. But after once all this nonsense about people saying the images are faked came out, the New York Times, I guess and I wasn't involved in that decision at all, but they had to decide whether or not to put the picture they're talking about. She's probably a 4 or 5 year old girl. Her eyes are closed. She has a breathing tube down, and she has a bullet wound right here. There's some brain matter that you can see on her hair. I'm a trauma surgeon, so I'm used to seeing things like that, but I can understand what they mean when they say that they're too horrific to publish. I personally wish that Americans could see more of what it looks like when a child is shot in the head, when a child is filleted open by bombs. I think it would make us think a little bit more about what we do in the world.
Did the Times also do a news piece on this, given the level of the video, of the scans you had, the pictures you had?
Yeah, we collected a lot of documentary evidence from people who are from healthcare workers who'd been in Gaza quite a bit, and all of them have quite a bit more. Yeah, everyone takes a lot of photographs and videos and things like that when they're there, and they're all date and location standards. They're not faked. I don't know if the Times news section has reached out to other people because their names are mostly public. I don't know if they've reached out to them or not for specific comment about specific things. I have been contacted by, and I don't think I'm exaggerating if I say dozens of journalists since coming back from Gaza, news journalists saying that we want to publish about the children being shot in the head, the extent of malnutrition, especially small infants dying of malnutrition and dehydration, and they all say that they need they need a way of just kind of overwhelming their editors' skepticism. They need just a humongous mass of evidence. So, like, I know, probably shouldn't name them, but I know journalists at the Post, at the Times, at BBC, the Washington Post, yes, who've been working on such stories for months, but still not out, despite having massive evidence.
Dr. Sid, what is the implication of so many children being shot in the head when you would assume that if children are, as the Israelis claim, unfortunate collateral damage of their bombing attempts to kill militants in Gaza? What does this mean to you that so many children have been found to be shot in the head?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, excuse me. So, as physicians and nurses, we can't say that this particular child or that particular child was shot on purpose or by Israel or somebody else. That's not what we can possibly do. We're not war crimes investigators. But I think it's pretty clear that when there's a pattern of, in the catchment area of every hospital in Gaza, every time any international has been around, for an entire year, on a daily basis, a child has been shot in the head in a place of 2 million people, it seems unlikely to me that that's an accident. You know, if you look at the differential of killing between Ukraine and Israel, it depends on what day you calculate it, but the differential is literally hundreds of times. The rate of killing of children in Gaza is hundreds of times higher than it is in Ukraine. So it's very hard for me to believe that this is just a byproduct of a war that's being fought in otherwise just ways. I find that hard to believe.
And you mentioned other battles and other wars. Your experience in those other war zones. What is the difference from what you see aside from the children being shot in the head? Other specific differences between what's happening in Gaza and what you've seen in other places?
Well, there's a few. One is the massive level of destruction. Not only have the hospitals been attacked, the universities, it's getting down to the level of destroying the water, sanitation, and hygiene infrastructure, and concentrating an entire population on the Mawasi area, which is basically just the beach of Gaza. Oxfam wrote a report where they estimated that when there were 500,000 people in the Mawasi area, there was one toilet for every 4,130 people there. That's just totally outrageous. I mean, those numbers don't exist anywhere else on the planet. Now there might be a million. Nobody really knows how many people have been pushed to the Mawasi, but these are just totally outrageous numbers. So you have a largely child population. Gaza's very young. It's been incredibly concentrated. It's been starved for a year. And the winter rains are coming, which are going to lift, all the sewage and everything up out of the ground. Every sewage plant has been destroyed. 90% of the water, sanitation, and hygiene infrastructure has been destroyed, and the healthcare system has been destroyed. So, yeah, that's pretty unique in my experience.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask you. You recently were supposed to speak at Columbia Medical School, but your event was canceled at the last minute. Can you talk about what happened?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it my event just because I wasn't the organizer, but yeah, I was invited with Adam Homowy, who is an American veteran and a plastic and reconstructive surgeon, and Dr. Mark Perlmutter, who is a orthopedic and hand surgeon, a Jewish American. I think he's been on Democracy Now! Right? He's definitely been on Democracy Now! Before. And Lana, whose last name I just can't pronounce, who's a surgical nurse who also was working in Gaza, and she was actually one of the first internationals to go into Gaza. We had a medical talk planned. It was a technical exercise in surgical and medical care in a extremely difficult setting. It wasn't a political talk, but the organizers were smart. They recognized that it was very likely to be canceled at the last minute. It was canceled as we walked in the building, from what I can tell, and so they had organized a bookstore down the street to be available, and so smart on their part. It's not surprising, but I think it's pretty shameful, to be perfectly honest.
I wanted to bring in addition to Dr. Faraz Sidwa, Raja Musla, who is the country representative in Gaza of the medical humanitarian aid group Med Global. Earlier this year, she worked as a nurse at Al Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. She's currently joining us from Chicago. Raja, thank you so much for being with us. You sheltered Al Shifa, and of course the head of Al Shifa Hospital was arrested by the Israeli military. Can you describe what the situation was like then when you were there, and what you understand as you deal with Gaza every day, even as a nurse in Chicago, is happening now and what you're calling for?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Sorry, actually, I have trapped at Shifa Hospital for more than 40 days, and what I'm witnesses in this period, actually, I can describe it as crimes because we receive at the hospital a huge number of injured persons coming to the emergency department, and the majority of the cases, unfortunately, women and children, and the massive of the injured for these cases was severe. It is the first time of my whole life I witness this kind of injury. Many people or many children come without legs, without arms, and even I witness a father hold his children in two bags. This is the first time of my life I'm witness the severity of the pumping that using during this war. The situation on Shifa Hospital was really very critical and very, very bad. There's no access to food because there's more than 80,000 IDPs inside the Shifa Hospital. There's no electricity. They cut the electricity, they cut the water, and the situation was very bad. One of the cases that I will never ever forget it, for a girl, her age is 10 years. She was completely burned. 9% of her body was burned, and she asked me to stay beside her and hold her hand until the moment. I will never ever forget her burn skin at my hands. Until the moment I feel that. Until the moment I feel guilty because I did not obey or stay beside her in the bed because she requested that, and I did not do that. Until the moment I feel guilty when she asked me about her mother and father and sister, brothers, and I cannot respond to her request because the whole family has been killed during bombing her house. I will never forget the dogs were eating the dead body inside Shifa Hospital.
What the hell?
At front of the emergency department. This will be stuck on my mind for the whole life.
That's disgusting.
I will never ever forget a boy. After the operation, his leg has been amputated, and he asked me to move his leg. What I should respond for a kid, his age is 9 years, when he asked me just move my leg, I pretend that I move his leg, and I'm ask him, is that okay? He said yes. In this moment I feel like my heart is broken because the suffering of my people inside Shifa Hospital and in the whole Gaza Strip. Now the situation on the ground, I'm receive calls from my colleague from the north of Gaza. There's no access to food, no access to water, no access to fuel for the hospitals to operate the centers or to operate the hospitals here in North Gaza. The situation is very, very critical. I'm here in Chicago just to send my people a message. We need ceasefire now. We need ceasefire now. Enough is enough. More than 1 year, and the people inside Gaza suffering from and taste many types of death. Enough is enough. 365 days, and the people inside Gaza taste all kind of death. I'm witness the horrible of this war. I'm witness 4 wars before, and this war is completely different. The death everywhere, the suffering everywhere. The people just eat one time. They save the food for the children, and the children suffering from malnutrition inside Gaza. My message for the whole world: we are a human being. We are not numbers. We have the right to receive health care inside Gaza. We have the right to rise up our children. We have the right to return back our lives, our dignity. We have the right to rebuild our universities, our schools. We are human beings, and we are not numbers.
And Raja Musa, I wanted to ask you the interactions you had, if any, with the Israeli soldiers. How did they treat the medical personnel, especially those who had come from other countries?
Yeah, actually now we send doctors from outside Gaza through Karm Abu Salim, but they prevent the Palestinian people, even they are American, to enter Gaza. So all the people we send from outside Gaza go through Karm Abu Salim because our Rafah border now is completely closed.
And finally, Dr. Faraz Sidwa, as we hear this devastating description from Raja Musla, who worked at Al-Shifa and is a Palestinian-American nurse, comes from Gaza City. As you talk about the spaces being closed in this country, I mean, the lack of follow-up on your piece, when you try to speak at, for example, Columbia, it's shut down. You have to go to a local independent bookstore. And yet the Times did publish this column and what it's meant, the kind of response that you've gotten. You haven't stopped since you've come back as you organize with doctors and nurses and medical personnel to describe what's happening there. I also wanted to ask your response to the latest letter of the Biden administration saying if they don't stop, improve the situation in Gaza, if Israel doesn't, the U.S. will cut off weapons, not this week or next week or the next week, but in a month.
Yeah, so I think the Times piece is significant in that it might represent a shift in elite opinion about just, like Raja said, enough is enough, and how much more destroyed do they want Gaza to be. And that opens up some possibilities for us to be able to do things that can actually help the people of Gaza, and not just Gaza, but elsewhere as well. Like you mentioned, the Times of Israel, there was a letter leaked apparently to the Times of Israel that the Biden administration sent on Sunday, to Ron Dermer and Yoav Gallant, the strategic affairs and defense ministers in Israel, saying that Israel needs to start immediately, but has up to 30 days to improve the humanitarian situation. And they pointed out some interesting things in that letter. They said that in September, the lowest amount of aid that's gone into Gaza in the past year went in September, which means the least amount that has ever gone into Gaza. Of course, the Israelis will deny that, but it's nevertheless quite obviously true. And they raised the possibility of what they called consequences under NSM 20 and other American laws, meaning the laws that prevent the provision of arms to human rights abusers. Well, I think you played a Reuters journalist pointing out earlier, there's no reason to wait 30 days. It's not like Israel hasn't been attacking Gaza for a year. So this has been going on for, like Raja said, long enough. We can stop sending them arms tomorrow, and the U.S. can lead an arms blockade against not just Israel, but Israel and all Palestinian and Lebanese armed groups, and that can stop or at least dramatically decrease the fighting, the death, and the misery immediately.
I want to thank you both for being with us. Dr. Faraz Sidwa, a surgeon in California, the San Joaquin General Hospital. His New York Times op-ed, 65 doctors, nurses, and paramedics, what we saw in Gaza. And Raja Musla, country representative in Gaza of my global medical humanitarian aid group, previously worked as a nurse at Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. She is a Palestinian from Gaza. Next up, less than 3 weeks from the election, Kamala Harris is campaigning in Michigan. Will she lose votes over the Biden administration's support for Israel's war on Gaza and Israel's expanding war on Lebanon? We'll speak with Abbas Alawiya. He's co-founder of Uncommitted Movement, a Lebanese American. Stay with us.
breathe the water. It seems like the Israelis are murdering people that might be able to breathe water. I've seen an MRI of a male Palestinian, probably Semitic descent, that can retract his penis. Yes, penis fully retracted. I know some of us up in there in America talk about if you're not circumcised, you can retract that thing fully.
I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Less than 3 weeks from the election, Kamala Harris is campaigning in Michigan. Will she lose votes over the Biden administration's support for Israel's war on Gaza and expanding war in Lebanon? Republican candidate Donald Trump has opened a new campaign office in the swing state. For more, we're joined by Abbas Alawiya. He is co-founder of the Uncommitted movement, which grew out of concerns by Democrats over President Joe Biden's policy toward
from
Israel
the Asian
and Gaza.
subcontinent,
Abbas Alawiya is a former
Pakistan,
Capitol Hill chief of
Hindustan.
staff for Democratic Congressman
What are you?
Cori Bush of Missouri. Before that, former longtime congressional staffer. In recent weeks, his relatives in Lebanon have had to flee their homes
discussion
over
with
Israeli
many
airstrikes.
descent
Welcome
people
back to Democracy Now!
about
It's
what
great to
real
have you with us.
Aryans
We also
are.
saw you at the Democratic
There ain't no such
convention
thing as a
leading
European
the,
Aryan.
sit-in
Ain't no such thing as a
overnight or
Caucasian
sleep in, if you will,
Aryan.
outside the DNC, demanding a Palestinian-American voice
Aryan
be heard
Muscle
on the stage, which
111
the DNC did not agree to. But first,
that
tell us
joined me.
about your family. Tell us what's happening in Lebanon to your grandmother and everyone else there.
MUSCEL 1111.
On my way in, I was on the phone with my family. These days, when it's as hard as
Area?
it is for Dr. Sidwa and others
You're not
to
Baratian.
have very,
You're not that.
the kernels of truth that we can get from Gaza exposed, I'm finding myself relying more and more on the first-hand accounts of my family members on the ground to really understand what's happening. Because I think what gets lost in the thousands and thousands and thousands.
I call
of
out everything I see that's
of
wrong or
humans,
incorrect.
Of people, of
I'm not scared of
universes,
any man, even though I'm one of the weakest persons on the planet.
People we know and love that are being harmed and killed. They're not numbers. They're real people. I'll tell you about my grandmother. My grandmother is an elderly person. She's in her 80s. She has numerous health conditions. Her mobility is severely impaired. She's
I'm more like her.
Forced to flee 4 different times now since the increased aggression by the Israeli military
More like
against
that guy's
Lebanese
grandmother.
civilians. She loves being in her home. She
Without
loves
the peace pipe.
going out to the stoop, the few steps that she's still able to take so that she can enjoy the breeze. Right now, she's in a foreign place. She's someone who feels like she's at the end of her life, and she fears that maybe she won't get to die in the home that she knows and loves. She's in a foreign apartment, just sitting there waiting, as a lot of people are. But that's not the only experience we're having. On my way in, I was talking to my aunt. My uncle had gone to Nabaltiya. He's a first responder, and at the top of your show, Amy, you were talking about the municipal building in Nabaltiya, where my family is from, that was targeted by the Israeli military today. In that building, the mayor of Nabaltiya was killed, as were numerous city officials, and my uncle was in that building. We couldn't get a hold of him for a little bit, and we were able to get a hold of him. Some of his friends died, were killed, and this isn't the first time he's had friends killed as a first responder. As a first responder, 5 of his colleagues recently, as they were trying to get humanitarian aid out to people, they were seeking shelter in a church in Deir Khaya in Lebanon, and the Israeli military bombed the church that had only first responders in there. You know, my family has very extensive experience, indeed expertise at surviving Israeli military violence. You know, the southern Lebanon was occupied from 1982 until 2000, and so I have family members who've endured the torture, the abuse, the targeting. What my family members are reporting now is a level of inhumanity, of violence, of belligerence that we haven't seen before. People are afraid to show up to the sites that have been destroyed, because what the Israeli military is doing now is they'll bomb whoever shows up to pull bodies out from under the rubble. And that's what my uncle is. He's
We're
a first
sadistic,
responder whose
man.
job it is
Satanist
to
and
pull out
sadistic.
the bodies from under the rubble.
Devilish.
Now even people
It's
like
the Israelis,
him are being
man.
targeted not once or twice, but systematically. And so I'm an American. I feel like I have a specific responsibility in the world, since my country is the one that is sending the weapons that are being used systematically to harm and kill civilians. And the best that I'm being told my government can offer is this leaked letter that you just referenced, the Biden administration officials warning the Netanyahu government that if they keep blocking that humanitarian aid in 30 days, they'll strongly consider what happens with the weapons that we're sending. Our leverage over the Israeli government is not about humanitarian aid. Our leverage with the Israeli government is about the weapons. The more weapons we send them, the more babies they kill. That's just how it works. And so stop sending the weapons. The what the folks in that municipal building where my uncle was in Lebanon, what they were doing is they were having a meeting about 2 trucks of humanitarian aid that had just gotten to Nablatiya. And it was volunteers and first responders and city officials meeting, thinking together, how are we going to get this aid out? What happened? The people administering the aid were the ones targeted and harmed and killed and traumatized. And so our leverage with the Israeli government is not in how many humanitarian trucks get in. It's in how many 2,000-pound bombs we send them to obliterate entire societies. I think our government would do better at actually using the leverage that it has.
Abbas, I wanted to ask you, in terms of the displacement, an estimated 1.2 million people just in a few weeks. Where are these folks supposed to go as Israel continues to advance into Lebanon?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Juan. Virtually everyone I know in Lebanon has been displaced. Most of my family lives in South Lebanon or in the southern suburbs of Beirut or in Beirut, the city proper. There's it's a situation where in the immediate aftermath of the very intense escalation, we had family members, friends with literally nowhere to go, staying on the whatever is available of the Beirut beach. Just staying there, waiting for the bombs to stop. People are in these really weird situations where they're trying to find somewhere else in Lebanon to go, and they're being asked for a month's rent, a year's rent in advance if they're able, in order to be able to seek shelter. This is a country
a year's rent in
prior
advance,
to this specific inhumane escalation by the Israeli military was already in a state of economic freefall. Most of the people being harmed are people who either live in poverty or live with the complexities of human life. I have a cousin just a few days ago who showed up to my aunt's house after where he lives in central Beirut was bombed, and he showed up to my aunt's house covered in debris with him. It was him and his wife and their 2 college-aged children. Both he and his wife are people who are blind. And so, think about the complexities of human life that we try to account for. I'm a Democrat, so we talk about, the care economy. We talk about wanting to support people as they age, wanting to support people in their disabilities. People in all of their complexities are living through the complexities of their everyday life, and simultaneously the walls around them are caving in on them, are slamming down on their heads. What are we even talking about as Democrats if we speak so much to the value of human life, of the dignity of workers, when our party's official policy is to send more and more weapons to a fascist government that is on a killing spree, on a baby killing spree? And so it's the realities of being displaced. It's not just sort of I'll move from one apartment to another. It's everything around you, your entire existence is uprooted. It's a violent reality.
So,
I wanted to ask you, what have you asked you and others in the uncommitted movement of the Harris campaign? What's been their response? And what do you say to people who say, well, let's get Harris elected into office because Trump is too dangerous, and we'll work on shifting her position once she's in the White House?
My message to every Democratic voter who's voting for Harris, to every person who identifies as a progressive, to every person who believes in the sanctity of every child, the sacredness of every child, of every elder, of every worker, the time to say that you will hold Harris accountable is not after the election, it's now. If you intend on voting for Harris, the great leader and Palestinian-American scholar Noura Harakat came out with a thread yesterday on Twitter where she's urging everyone who is voting for Harris, don't vote for Harris in private, state publicly that you are voting for Kamala Harris, and be specific about how you will be accountable to the people, the Palestinian Americans who currently have family enduring a genocide. How will you be accountable to them? How are you insisting, even through your vote, that you will hold Democrats accountable to stop the weapons that are flowing to harm and kill civilians? So that's my message to every voter hearing this. If you're going to vote for Harris, I believe that we've got to block Donald Trump. If you believe that, state that publicly and say, and once we block Donald Trump, here's how I will hold Harris accountable. That during her first 100 days, she must achieve a ceasefire, and the way to achieve a ceasefire is to stop sending the weapons. So we have to state that publicly, and we have been doing everything we can to offer Vice President Harris opportunity after opportunity to meet the community that is experiencing this immense level of pain where they are. It just so happens that Vice President Harris needs every vote she can get in a state like Michigan, and a lot of us in Michigan are currently in a state of mourning. My friend's father, Hashkamil Jawad, was someone who was like the people today in Nabatea trying to get humanitarian aid to people, and was killed for doing so by an Israeli military airstrike. He's an American. This is a community in a state of grief. And so, as we have been urging the Vice President's team, please meet with people who are directly impacted. Meet with Lebanese Americans and meet with Palestinian Americans who have had family killed over there by the bombs that the Vice President and the President's administration is sending. What we've been told repeatedly is, the Vice President is very busy. She's on the campaign trail. She can't really be taking meetings like that right now. And then the next day, we'll see the Vice President has met. They put out a release saying she met with Muslim Americans and Arab Americans, but she only meets with people who have endorsed her campaign. That's an inappropriate posture to have at this moment. If you are going to Michigan and ask these people for their vote, you need to recognize that Arab American, Palestinian American communities right now are in a state of grieving, and you have an obligation, a responsibility to sit down and hear from them. We've heard over the past year repeated reports of the administration prioritizing meetings with the families of Israeli Americans who have family being held hostage in Gaza. It's important that the administration hear from those families. Why is it that the Vice President have not taken the time to sit down with Palestinian American families who have family over there? I have asked this question repeatedly of the Vice President's team. I was told that, she's spoken to some families in the past. She's had sit-downs in the past, but also I was told explicitly that she has not sat down with a single Palestinian American family who has family killed in Gaza this year, in the year 2024. What are you waiting for, Vice President Harris? And Amy, you had Dr. Sidwa here. Those doctors, those U.S. medical workers, they have been asking Vice President Harris to sit down with them. She won't do it. President Biden won't do it. And so, in my estimation, it feels like Vice President Harris is not doing what it takes to be both humane and compassionate and sensitive to the political realities in Michigan that are necessary to engage with in order to beat Donald Trump. And so, everybody who's going to try and beat Donald Trump, despite that, needs to make a public commitment now that they'll hold Vice President Harris accountable, especially during her first 100 days, to stop the weapons from flowing to Netanyahu's killing spree.
Salawiya, I want to thank you for being with us, co-founder of the Uncommitted Movement. Next up, we look at the election. Harris and Trump ramping up efforts to appeal to the Latinx community. Why are some of them moving to the right? Stay with us.
There was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care tied you to a kitchen chair. She broke your throat, she cut your hair, and from your lips she drank a hallelujah.
Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, performed by Rufus Wainwright. Both Wainwright and the Leonard Cohen estate have criticized Donald Trump for playing the song during his town hall, that unusual town hall in Pennsylvania, when the former president stopped taking questions and turned the event into a dance party of sorts, playing music for more than 30 minutes. Wainwright said, quote, "Witnessing Trump and his supporters commune with his music last night was the height of blasphemy." This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. With just 19 days until the presidential election, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are ramping up efforts to appeal to a major voting bloc in battleground states, Latinx voters. Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris appeared at a town hall with Latinx voters in Las Vegas, Nevada, hosted by Univision last week. She took a question from Yvette Castillo.
And I'm an American citizen, born to two Mexican parents. They were here before I was even born. They've worked their whole lives. But with the way immigration laws change over time, I was only able to help my dad get his legal status squared away, but not my mom's. My mom passed away just 6 weeks ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And she was never, ever able to get the type of care and service that she needed or deserved. Sorry.
Take your time. Take your time.
So my question for you is, what are your plans, or do you have plans to support that subgroup of immigrants who have been here their whole lives, or most of them, and have to live and die in the shadows?
There are real people who are suffering because of an inability to put solutions in front of politics. I mean, an example of this on immigration policy is that as it relates to what we need to do to strengthen our border.
Meanwhile, Republican candidate Donald Trump will take the stage with Latinx voters tonight in Miami at a town hall also hosted by Univision. For more, we go to Austin, Texas. We're joined by Marissa Franco, director and co-founder of Gente, a national organizing hub for Latinx and Chicanx communities. Welcome back to Democracy Now! We had you on at the Democratic Convention in Chicago, Marissa. I wanted to get first your response to Kamala Harris. What she responded to this very emotional plea was the support of the Biden administration for the bill that militarizes the border further. Your response to the Democratic and Republican approach to how to deal with the immigration crisis in this country.
Hey there, thanks for having me. That story is heartbreaking, and it's a story that many, many people experience in this country. We are now close to 40 years since the last legalization in this country. Vice President Harris's response is insufficient. The woman was not talking about the border. She was talking about the fact that her mother lived in this country, contributed to this country, and was part of her community, and was her mother, and could not get the care she needed, and had no recourse. And all around, we've seen, and she mentioned, she was able to adjust the status for her father, but wasn't able for her mom. There has been, unfortunately, immigration reform in this country. It has been deportation first, and building a huge infrastructure to survey, to identify and detain folks, and that includes at the border. What we're seeing at the border is horrible. The border bill was not going to be a solution, and it will not be a solution for Vice President Harris to mimic Donald Trump's policies on immigration. In fact, she has to contrast. I think Latinos, by and large, even when they say immigration or border security is an issue for them, it's a much more nuanced view. I think people want a fair shake, and they're seeing that. I think what's happening is that folks are generally, this is not just an issue in the Latino community, but generally working class people are, the math isn't mathing.
Whether it's their wages, whether it's their job conditions, or the cost of living, where, just trying to make it, people are barely keeping their heads above water. And what Donald Trump has presented is who's at fault. And instead of it being the billionaire class, instead of it being corporations not paying their fair share, he's blaming the easiest people to blame, which has been done time immemorial in this country, which is blame immigrants, blame the other. Kamala Harris is not contrasting that sufficiently enough, and she didn't answer that woman's question. And I think the question remains, what will happen to folks who have been living, working, part of our community in this country, who have no real recourse to be able to adjust their status in this country?
And I wanted to ask you, Marisa, what's your sense of the enthusiasm for voting? Clearly, in 2020, there was a huge surge of Latino voters in the last election, but there are key states. A lot of people focus on Arizona, but I also keep reminding people that there's 1 million Latinos who live in the state of Pennsylvania, perhaps the biggest battleground state. What is your sense of the enthusiasm among Latinx voters in terms of this election?
I think Harris Walz will win the majority of Latino voters in this election. That, to me, is very clear. At the same time, it's never been Trump's goal to win a majority of Latino voters. He just has to win enough of a sliver of it. And I do think there are real cracks, and I don't know that the right question is like, is Harris doing enough? Is the Harris campaign doing enough? I think this, in many ways, that campaign's behind the 8 ball in terms of what the Democratic Party has done over the last many years in terms of their posture, not just to Latinos, but to Black Americans, to working class people broadly in this country. I think the enthusiasm is, I think there was a surge after Biden stepped out and she came in, and I think it's leveled out, and I think it's the economy that's really, really hurting, and the fact that Biden is not popular and she's not contrasting herself enough. And so in those states where it's going to be very, very close, I am somewhat concerned that there's not going to be enough of a margin, because I think that there's, I think a lot of people don't know exactly what her plan is, or the plans that are being put out are not really capturing folks' imagination or interest. So I think it's going to be very close, and I don't know that there's huge enthusiasm, I would say, in the community right now.
And Marisa Franco, would you say that the corporate media is accurate in saying that there is a rightward shift within segments of the Latinx community? We have 30 seconds.
No, absolutely not. I think what Latinos are doing is declaring their political independence from partisan politics. I think the Latinos are looking to see who is going to deliver. I think even if Harris's message is resonating, even if they reject Trump's values and the way he acts, which many do, they fundamentally don't believe that the Democrats will deliver. And that is something that's at the doorstep of the Democratic Party, and them deciding, are they truly the class of working people in this country, or are they the class of the sort of upper middle, like corporate sections, like liberal but still corporate, and I think that's what Latinos are questioning. I don't think that they're going to the right. They're looking to see who actually cares
Marisa
about them and is going to
Franco, I want
actually
to thank you
deliver.
for being with us ahead of La Gente. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Thanks for joining us.
From the roots up, CIUT 89.5 FM, Toronto.
Here, I'm going to read a statement here before I continue with the music playing and the moon set in the background. The Israeli genocide against Semitic descent Arabs and Africans living in the Levant needs to stop. For a long time, Orthodox Jews have been against what the IDF and the Israelis do ever since the start. The IDF murdered Israelites that were living in the Levant peacefully amongst Christians and Muslims, which are all Semitic descent. Semite is a genetic stock. It is not a word that can be taken by Zionists and twisted to mean something it does not. The anti-Semites, the people that are anti-Semite, are the Zionist and IDF military. Understand that. Read the Bible. Read the story of Noah in the Bible. Shem, his son. That is where the term Semite comes from. Explained in another post how the letters got messed up. In Russian Cyrillic, they have 3 letters that correspond to SH, SCH, and TSCH. It looked like something like a W in English, but not. The same can be said for Hebrew. The SH, Shwa, looks like a Cyrillic letter. Modern Hebrew, the language of Israel, is not ancient Hebrew. Ancient Hebrew, for a lot of Semites, Israelite descent people that converted to Christianity or Islam, they write in Arabic script. They write ancient Hebrew in Arabic script. Greek can even be written in Arabic script. So just because someone has Arabic script does not mean they are Muslim. The IDF is murdering the Israelites. They are murdering Israelite descendants that happen to be Christian and Muslim. This is the fact of life. DNA tests will confirm this. But the Israelis are using all kinds of BS to twist people's minds that don't know real history to make people believe that they are the chosen people. They are not. Even Jews will admit that they are not supposed to return to Israel. Israel should not exist until the Messiah comes. Where is the Messiah? The same Messiah for the Jews is the same Messiah for Christians and Muslims. If there is no Messiah on the planet, that means Israel should not exist as a country. That country called Israel is a fraud made by Nazis to push Israelite descendant peoples off their land that were living in harmony in a place called Stone Palace. Where in the name Stone Palace, Palestine, does it say that Israelites were not living there before, or Semitic descent people were not living there before? Learn history. Don't be blind like United States and Canada that are trying to erase history. United States and Canada seem to be on an erasure mission. United States and Canada seem to be white supremacists on a mission to erase all cultures' history. I said it. I live in Canada and I see it. I'm Indigenous Canadian, but yet since over 50 years, the Trudeau family has wanted us to identify as Black African. Fake Lucy, missing link is Louisa Woman. She was found in Brazil. The IDF and the Israelis are murdering Israelites. They are murdering Semites. They are murdering Semitic descent Africans and Arabians. Where in the term Arabian does it say it's not related to Abraham? Abraham changed his life twice in his life. It was once Abraham and then Abraham. Arabian Peninsula sounds very close to Abraham. So the Arabian Peninsula is the sense of Abraham, is it not? The Arabian Peninsula that was considered part of Africa until the Zionists relabeled the maps. So definitely, Africans and Arabians can be Semitic. Who are the people that are calling themselves Israeli? Most of them have dual citizenship with European countries, while other Israelis that come in from other countries like Asia or Africa or America, they cannot have dual citizenship. Think about that. The IDF are not Israelites. Many of them are Nazis, executing the Nazi plan. Even Orthodox Jews had said so back in the 30s. Even Einstein had said it. Yes, Albert Einstein, the well-known intelligent Jew-ish physicist, had said that. The country Israel, recognized by the United Nations, is a fraud. It is a Nazi empire being used to execute National Socialism, countries with only one religion worldwide. And their plan is to take over the whole world and force the whole world into one religion. Trust me on that. I know that for real.
The moon's image is going to be going through two thick lintels, window panes. There, very thick wood, about 2 inches by 3 inches. Going to go through about 1, 2, 3 of them right now. Like superhero age music, right? All the comic book superheroes come out. So they come into existence. Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, Wonder Woman, etc., etc. Age of the superheroes. On this island, they used to have many bats, fruit bats it was. Fruit bats. Fruit bats. Fruit bats. Fruit bats. Used to have fruit bats on this island, yeah. definitely need one nice 3-paper cannabis peace pipe for every 5 kilometers I walk or so to be able to talk. Very real. It is real. ITISREAL. It is real. It's real. Put some grease on my hands.